Hello, my name is Stephanie McCullough Campbell, and I'm a doctoral candidate of school psychology at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. Thank you so much for watching my video today. This is about needed innovations in social justice, a research synthesis of school-based weight bias and body image interventions. I will start by disclosing that I have no commercial relationships involved with this project. For this presentation, I'll discuss my positionality, talk about the reason and the need for this type of work, go over my methods, results, and discussion, and then touch on some future possibilities within this work. So just to give you an idea of who I am, I originally am from rural Arkansas, went to the East Coast for a while, then came up to Wisconsin for graduate school, as you can see on the map with my arrows. But one really important and salient part of my identity is being a biracial individual. My mother is an immigrant from the Philippines, and that has a huge part of why I'm doing this work and how I'm going about it. The picture that you see on the screen on the right is me doing one of my favorite activities, which is participating in an activist marching band, forward marching band from Madison. And I wanted to give you a little bit of background because this has a lot to do with weight and bodies and how tied that is to culture and families and heritage. And this has really pushed me to change my research topic from when I started grad school and be a real pursuer of body liberation. And for you, I feel like this is important because you are somebody with a body. You work with folks with bodies, and counteracting prejudice is key, especially to those attending a conference like ICED. So the need for this is that it's social justice, liberatory work. Systemic weight bias leads to widespread inequities, and this is clear in all kinds of data, not only in the medical field, but in other kinds of long-term economic benefit and the types of opportunities people are given. And I view the school environment as a crucial setting for this. There's also a ubiquity of body-related stressors and challenges, especially for women, so it is unequally impacting different types of people. So my guiding questions for this is, how do extant empirically supported school-based interventions promote anti-weight bias work? How are cultural, familial, and identity considerations integrated? What should be addressed on personal and systemic levels to dismantle weight bias in research and practice? I don't have much terminology to go over, but I want to put one of my terms I've been trying to use in my own writing out into the world and open up some discussion. So I would love to hear some feedback. I just give a little overview of weight stigma or bias, which is a social devaluation and denigration of individuals perceived to carry excess weight. That's a definition from Tomiyama in 2014. And then weight nonconformity is a term that I've been using to talk about the deviation from the dominant sociocultural ideals of body size. I won't go into detail of why I don't prefer using big, bigger, larger, that kind of talk. I have more information I've written up about it, and I'm happy to share that with you. And I personally consider myself a fat activist and someone who is comfortable calling myself a fat woman and using it as a value-free, descriptor neutral term. However, within the field that I'm in school psychology, it is not quite there where it can really embrace something that's so emotion laden as the word fat and really have that hit someone in the face when I'm already trying to do kind of what feels like subversive work is a lot. So I'm trying to think of what will fit into my field and within the constraints that I have as being a person within the broad field of psychology, which is riddled with all kinds of equity problems already. While holding both of my beliefs and also trying to get this into the field. So I've come up with a term with my advisor, weight nonconformity, which is borrowed from gender nonconformity. And in this case, I'm referring to people of the larger, bigger, heavier size, because that is different than the thin ideal that that plagues all of us, especially in the Western world. So for my methods, I did a comprehensive search within 6 different online databases. They are listed here. And for this procedure, I searched terms that had to involve school, some kind of reference to student, youth, child, adolescent, and then one of the following terms about body image diversity satisfaction or weight bias, stigma, or discrimination. And those had to appear somewhere in the abstract, title, and or keywords. So after I searched that, there are 813 articles that came up. I screened all of them with some inclusion and exclusion criteria, and I got down to 33 interventions that came up with 20 final school-based studies that I included. Some excluded ones were ones that more focused on eating disorders, so I did not include anything that had eating disorder as a main variable, because that I feel like is important but different work than what I'm trying to get at. When I think about weight bias and the impact of weight stigma on children, I think that that has nothing to do with having an eating disorder. I mean, it's not directly connected to an eating disorder. You don't have to have a disordered eating practice to experience stigma. You don't have to be in a certain body size to feel those feelings or have those judgments. So I really think this applies to all children. And I completed the search last summer in July 2019. This is the list of articles that qualified for my final sample, and I'll be talking about them in aggregate for the next few slides. They ranged in years from 2005 to 2018, but as you can see, there are very few that actually happened in the early 2000s and more of them on the later side of that. In terms of location for the samples, the majority of them happened, as you can see, outside of the USA, which as a United States-based student and practitioner, this is extremely interesting to me. A lot of the work is happening in Australia and the United Kingdom in terms of what's school-based interventions. There were 3 studies in Israel and 1 each in Germany, the USA, Taiwan, and Sweden. So the interventions utilized, I thought this was a really interesting finding that there were only, out of 20 studies, there were 11 named interventions and 5 other unique ones. So a total of 16 different intervention protocols, I suppose, used out of 20 studies. This is fascinating. They're only Happy Being Me in 2 different versions and In Favor of Myself that happened multiple times. And everything else was just a one-off, at least what I was able to assess at the time of the search. So I looked at the type of journal that these articles were published in, and the majority of them, or the most of them of a group, were in the body image category, which actually only contained the journal Body Image. 4 of them were published in some sort of journal related to eating disorders, 2 each in something related to eating or food, and then 2 in open, and also 2 in open access, and then 1 each of those other categories. And what I find particularly interesting here is, as a person in the Department of Educational Psychology, it really struck me that there's only 1 in any kind of journal related to educational psychology. This seems to be extremely relevant to the work that we do, and so I'm disappointed that there weren't more in our field. As for the grades and genders across all of the articles and samples, you can see here the distribution. Most of them are the age ranges. When the age ranges weren't provided, I provided a dotted lighter green line for the grade range that was provided. And the studies kind of centered around the ages broadly, like 9 to 14, kind of the largest chunk, but it was across primary, secondary, all kinds of different school groups. 12 of the studies had girls and boys in the sample, and only 8 had girls only. None of the studies incorporated gender non-binary identities. As part of my main questions involving heritage, family, culture, and the school-based context, I looked at if these articles had anything to do with the intervention of parents and family, school personnel, acknowledgement of culture, heritage, identity. So you can see here that 0 of them actually incorporated the parents or family, 0 of them had any direct interaction with acknowledgement of culture, heritage, or identity, and only 5 utilized school personnel. This graphic is showing these different characteristics. So I thought about what the major themes were that I was reading in all the articles. So included bullying, teasing, media literacy, self-esteem, weight eating, and weight bias. And so this is talking about within the interventions. Was it addressed as part of the intervention? Was it measured as a variable in the study, or was it both? As you can see, for a lot of these things, there weren't a lot of mention of these particular topics, though media literacy, self-esteem, and weight eating were all things that were more mentioned. Weight bias, in particular, was only regarded at all in 3 studies out of the 20. So for discussion and implications, I have 3 main topics to kind of cover about culture, family, school personnel, weight bias. So as far as culture and family, it's crucial, I believe, to include this in as part of the intersectional understanding of children and youth and the way they interact with their bodies and the way that we can help them have better relationships with weight and anti-bias work as we bring them up in schools. And so future research really needs to investigate samples that are a lot more diverse, as with a lot of them being in the UK and Australia and Germany and some places that aren't necessarily diverse samples that they have access to. I think there could be a lot of value in doing this in broader international context, but especially in the US, where we have a really unique kind of broken system that is extremely disparate in terms of ethnic and racial minoritization. It's also something where not all the studies really focused on the covering like how the weight status or the weight nonconformity of its individuals. So it'd be interesting to know more context of that within the work. And thinking about these things systemically and from an environmental and sociocultural broad ecosystem perspective is really key to understanding how health and how this is impacting families and students. I've created a QR code here that you can navigate to some other work that I'm doing in this conference, so that where I talk about intersectionality. For school personnel, these folks play a vital role in treating by having tolerance and showing an example of how body sizes are all okay, as with other identities. We're not going to treat someone different because of their skin color, and we certainly shouldn't treat them any different because of race. There needs to be more of a priority, and this is especially within my school psychology background, this comes into play, between home, school, and family, and really uniting those different contexts and having communication between them is really key, I think, to being able to get an idea about what's going on with the kids, and as well as the influences that might sustain these biased ideals. There also needs to be more evaluation and development for school-based interventions instead of each study having its unique intervention. And then finally, for addressing weight bias. So weight bias beliefs actually have a greater impact on psychological functioning kids than their actual body size. And so being able to intervene early is key, and the school context is perfect for that. This is also more consistently impacts females across all domains in terms of what's been measured with weight. And the reduction efforts should incorporate contact with people of other body sizes, of people from weight non-conforming bodies, or people who identify as fat individuals. This is key in being able to promote tolerance, and this has a lot to do with like all ports contact theory and related social theories. So for future work, interventions need to target teachers and other school personnel, involve families, honor individual cultures, heritage, socioeconomic status, access, etc. More of these need to take place in the USA. We have all kinds of problems in terms of race and educational inequities, and you better believe that we also have problems in an extreme way in terms of bodies and the way that they're treated and the way that fat bodies are treated in society. I also think that this should be more inclusive of gender nonconformity along with those other identities, because gender has a really strong connection to how you perceive your own body size and shape and other characteristics. Within this, it would be great to attend more purposefully to intersectionality and to really directly, overtly challenge and name weight bias. As far as my own work, my dissertation is a critical dialogic anti-racist, anti-weight bias intervention with 5th grade teachers. And later, I hope to do some investigation around ethnically and racially minoritized youth and how diet culture influences their consideration of their own culture and family. And then in the long term, I'm always working to dismantle systemic oppression in schools and through school psychology and within school psychology. I very much appreciate your attention today. Thank you so much. And I would love absolutely to get in touch, hear your thoughts, get feedback. You can see this QR code will bring you to my website, which has a lot of other information and connections to some of my other projects. If you download this PDF, my references are included here. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the International Conference on Eating Disorders.